When I first moved into the neighborhood, I thought I had finally found the perfect place, a quiet cul-de-sac. Clean sidewalks, friendly faces, and enough sunshine to keep my high-capacity solar grid running at peak performance almost year-round. I had invested heavily into a personal solar setup. Roof panels, backyard panels, a battery bank, and a smart inverter system capable of tracking every watt generated and every watt consumed. It was my pride and joy, the result of years of planning. I wasn't just powering my house. I was selling excess energy back to the grid. Every month I received credits instead of bills. It felt like I beat the system. But like every peaceful community, there's always one person who seems determined to ruin the harmony. In my case, that person was the woman everyone quietly called HOA Karen. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the unofficial self-appointed queen of the HOA, showing up at people's doors to lecture them about trash can placement, lawn height, and even mailbox color. She drove a shiny white Tesla Model X and treated it like royalty. She also treated everyone else's property like it belonged to her. That included, as I would soon learn, my solar grid. It started subtly at first, tiny fluctuations in my overnight power logs. I had my inverter set to log hourly output and usage. Usually, my nighttime consumption was very predictable. But suddenly I was seeing strange dips in the battery levels between midnight and 4 in the morning. At first I thought it was a software glitch. Then I wondered if my refrigerator had switched into defrost mode or if my AC had malfunctioned. But then the logs showed a very distinct charging pattern. Steady power draw around 7.5 kilowatts for several hours straight. That wasn't an appliance. That was an electric vehicle charger. A slow suspicion crawled into my mind. Our neighborhood had several EV owners, but most of them had their own home chargers installed. I certainly had mine. Only one person, as far as I knew, still relied primarily on community charging stations. Karen. Her Tesla seemed to be plugged into the HOA station almost constantly. The next night, I decided to check the logs again. Same pattern, but this time the draw happened earlier, around 10 p.m. The power drain cut off at 1 a.m. That amount of power wasn't free. Someone was tapping directly into my solar supply. But how? I walked the perimeter of my house the following morning, looking for any signs of tampering. My external outlets were intact. My charging port was untouched, and my cables were neatly coiled. Everything seemed normal, but something kept gnawing at me. There was no other explanation. Someone was stealing my electricity. 2 nights later, I couldn't shake the thought. I turned off all the external lights, kept the inside dark, and waited. Right around midnight, my phone buzzed an automated alert from my smart inverter showing a sudden surge in power draw. This was it. Quietly, I stepped onto my back porch. No movement, no noise. But then I noticed something odd. The faint glow of headlights dimmed, but still visible from the side of my property near the fence line. I narrowed my eyes and slowly walked toward the edge of the yard. And there it was. A long, thick orange extension cable snaked under my fence panel. My heart sank and boiled at the same time. Who would do this? I followed the cable to the source. It led straight across the property line, across Karen's side yard, and into her garage wide open. Lights blazing, Tesla plugged in and leaching power like a vampire draining blood. Karen was inside the garage, sipping something from a mug, scrolling on her tablet, completely unbothered, completely casual, as if she had every right to run a cable across someone else's yard. I was furious. I leaned down, grabbed the cable, and yanked it free from my outlets. Immediately, the charging port on her Tesla clicked and flashed red. Karen looked up sharply, spotted me through the garage opening, and stomped outside like I had just vandalized her precious spaceship. What do you think you're doing? She snapped. I couldn't believe the audacity. What am I doing? You're stealing my electricity. She crossed her arms. It's not stealing. Your panels produce extra power. You're not using it. Why should it go to waste? I stared at her. Because it's not yours. That's why. She scoffed and tossed her hand dismissively. It's renewable energy. Community energies. The HOA guidelines say we're supposed to support green living. I nearly laughed at the insanity of her logic. My solar grid isn't community property. You ran a cable under my fence. And she challenged. If you weren't using it, I don't see the issue. This was the moment I realized I wasn't dealing with a normal person. Karen genuinely believed that anything she wanted automatically belonged to her. And because she was part of the HOA board, she acted like she had authority over everyone and everything. I clenched my jaw and kept my voice calm. I am telling you right now, stop stealing my power. She narrowed her eyes like I had just dared to challenge royalty. You can take it up with the HOA. With that, she grabbed the cable and retreated into her garage, slamming the door shut. I stood there stunned, pulse racing, staring at the fence line. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't sorry. She was annoyed that I had interrupted her theft. That night, I realized something very important. Karen wasn't going to stop. She thought she was untouchable. She thought the HOA protected her. And she thought I was the kind of quiet, tech-nerdy neighbor who wouldn't fight back. She had no idea who she was dealing with. And she definitely didn't know what my solar system was capable of. The morning after catching Karen red-handed stealing power from my solar grid, I woke up determined to settle the situation the reasonable way. I believed in handling things directly before escalating. Maybe, I thought, she had acted out of ignorance or desperation. Maybe she'd understand the seriousness if I explained the technical and financial impact. After all, electricity wasn't free, not even solar. Every watt that went into her Tesla was a watt I couldn't store, use, or sell back to the grid for credits. But more than that, it was about principle, respect, boundaries. I wasn't willing to let someone walk all over me just because they sat on some HOA board. I walked over to her house later that afternoon. Before I even knocked, I heard her voice sharp and irritated, arguing with someone on speakerphone. Probably the internet company. Or maybe a customer service rep who had the misfortune of dealing with her. When she opened the door, her eyes narrowed like she had been expecting me and was already annoyed by my existence. What now? She demanded. I kept my composure. I just want to talk like neighbors. You can use my power without permission. You need to stop plugging your Tesla into my outlets. She rolled her eyes with the world-class arrogance of someone who had never faced consequences in her life. You're being dramatic. It's just electricity. It's my electricity. Your solar grid makes more than enough. She snapped back. Why are you being selfish? I only used it a few nights because the community charger was full. Then you should wait like everyone else. I replied calmly. Or install your own home charger. She snorted. Do you know how expensive that is? I stared at her. So because it's expensive, you decided to steal from me. It's not stealing. She barked. It's borrowing. The sun belongs to everyone. I felt my brain cells slowly dying from the stupidity. Karen, this is not a shared solar farm. I paid for my system. Well, she smirked. If you can afford a setup like that, clearly you don't need the money. And then she slammed the door in my face. I stood there for a long moment, stunned by the level of entitlement radiating off this woman. She genuinely believed she was doing nothing wrong. Worse, she thought I was the villain for daring to protect my own property. Still, I refused to let the situation escalate emotionally. I took photos of the cable marks under my fence line and screenshotted the power logs showing the exact charging patterns. Evidence always matters, especially when dealing with someone who twists reality to fit her narrative. That evening, I reached out to the HOA. I wrote a calm, detailed email explaining the situation, attaching logs and images. I expected a firm response. After all, Stealing electricity wasn't just an HOA issue, it was illegal. I figured this would be handled in a day or two. I should have known better. The next morning, I received an email from the HOA president naturally, one of Karen's closest friends on the board. The tone was condescending enough to make my jaw clench. Dear resident, we received your message regarding alleged power misuse. After careful review, we want to remind all community members that harmony and cooperation are top priorities. It is essential that residents avoid unnecessary complaints that create tension in our neighborhood. Unnecessary complaints. My electricity was being siphoned off at midnight like I lived next to a charging parasite. And they were telling me not to make tension. The email continued. We cannot take sides without clear video evidence. And even then, energy sharing among neighbors is encouraged by the HOA's sustainability guidelines. I reread that line twice. Energy sharing. Sustainability guidelines. What guidelines? I had read the HOA handbook cover to cover when I moved in. There was absolutely nothing about sharing privately generated power. Finally, the last line sealed everything for me. Please resolve this matter amicably with Karen. She has expressed concern that you may be targeting her unfairly. I nearly laughed out loud. She had already reached out to them. She was building her narrative, probably claiming I was harassing her or discriminating against her electric car lifestyle. I typed a polite reply asking for a meeting. The board agreed to one but set the time for 2 weeks later. 2 weeks? She could drain half my battery bank by then. But I wasn't done. If the HOA refused to intervene, I would take matters into my own hands legally and strategically. Before I could finalize a plan, though, Karen decided to escalate things herself. 3 nights later, just past midnight, I got another inverter alert. She was stealing power again after I had explicitly told her to stop. I opened the curtains just enough to peek toward the fence. And sure enough, that same orange extension cable was snaking across my lawn again, plugged into my outlet like she owned the place. I was furious, but I didn't confront her. Not yet. I pulled out my phones, opened the cameras, and took a full-screen video showing the cable, the connection to my outlets, the timestamp, and the garage lights glowing across the property line. Then something unexpected happened. Karen stepped into her driveway, yawning dramatically as if she had just finished some heroic labor and needed the world to appreciate her sacrifice. She glanced in my direction and smirked. Actually smirked. That was when I realized she was doing this intentionally, not out of need. Not out of ignorance, but out of pure spite and ego. She wanted to show me that she could take whatever she wanted because the HOA would protect her. The next morning, I sent the video to the HOA. Their reply: we appreciate the footage, but it does not conclusively prove unauthorized usage. The cable shown could be temporary or incidental. Please avoid further accusations without mediation. Incidental. The cable was running under my fence. How more conclusive did they want it to be a sworn confession? At that point, any remaining faith I had in the HOA evaporated. They weren't incompetent, they were enabling her. She was one of them, and I was the newcomer. It didn't matter that the facts were on my side. In their eyes, she held power. I was just the outsider complaining too much. That night, as I sat looking over my solar system dashboard, monitoring every watt, I realized something crucial. If I wanted to stop Karen, I couldn't rely on the HOA. I needed to rely on something far more dependable: technology. My technology. My solar system wasn't just powerful. It was smart. Very smart. Smart enough to defend itself if its owner knew how to use it. And I did. Karen thought she was unstoppable. She was about to learn that I was not the kind of neighbor she could exploit. All she needed to do was plug in one more time. And she absolutely would. After the HOA's pathetic response, I sat alone in my workshop staring at the dashboard of my solar monitoring system. The neatly arranged panels on my screen displayed every watt my house produced, stored, and consumed. It was almost beautiful clean, efficient, perfectly optimized, and now corrupted by Karen's nightly power thefts. I knew she wasn't going to stop. People like Karen didn't stop when confronted. They stopped only when forced. And since the HOA clearly wouldn't restrain her, I realized something critical. I needed to make my system so unforgiving that using it without permission would become a very expensive mistake for her. But before I acted, I needed more than just evidence, I needed control. My system was already advanced, with smart inverters, power meterings, and surge handling. But earlier that year, I had bought an experimental upgrade module, a power load balancer designed for off-grid cabins and RV setups. It wasn't officially released yet. I had beta access because I'd invested in the development company. The module allowed precise manipulation of voltage output, load limits, circuit prioritization, and controlled surges designed to protect batteries. And in the wrong hands or right hands, depending on perspective, it could be used to make unauthorized usage uncomfortable. I opened the module's interface and smiled. This wasn't just a monitoring system anymore. It was a defense system. First, I set up a hidden alerts. Anytime an external load plugged into my outdoor outlet drew more than 6 kW, I would get an instant notification. Karen's Tesla charger peaked at 7.5 kW. Perfect. The system would now notify me the moment she plugged in, even if it was 3 a.m., even if I was asleep. Second, I adjusted the voltage control. Not to dangerous levels, never anything that would cause harm, but high enough to overwhelm an EV charger's internal stabilizer. When the charger detects unstable voltage input, it automatically throttles or even shuts down to protect itself. A perfectly safe mechanism, just inconvenient for someone trying to steal electricity. And inconvenient was exactly what I needed. Third, I configured a timed surge limit. The moment her charger hit my outlets, the system would allow it to draw power for 30 seconds, just long enough for her Tesla screen to show charging started. Then the load balancer would bump the voltage slightly out of tolerance. Nothing illegal. Nothing harmful, simply enough to make the Tesla freak out. Flash warnings. And abort the charge. She'd assume her charger was faulty, or that her cable was malfunctioning. She definitely wouldn't suspect that my system was outsmarting her. Still, I wasn't satisfied. Karen wasn't the type to get subtle hints. She wasn't the type to back down. She would try again and again until the universe slapped her so hard she had no choice but to stop. So I prepared for that possibility too. I built a complete charging history profile based on her theft patterns, time, duration, power draw. The system now used those patterns to automatically predict when she would strike next. Then I installed a small camera not pointing at her property, not invading privacy, but aimed directly at my outlets. Legal, simple, effective. If she plugged in again, I'd have crystal clear video with timestamps. After hours of tweaking, configuring, and testing, I sat back and stared at my screen. I felt like Tony Stark sitting in front of his reactor. My solar grid wasn't just a power system, now it was armor. And Karen was about to punch it. Later that evenings, as I reviewed the HOA handbook again, just to make sure I wasn't violating some hidden clause, I heard the familiar crunch of gravel from next door. Karen's Tesla was backing into her driveway. I peeked through my blinds. She stepped out, looking annoyed and tired, probably after a long day of terrorizing people about mailbox heights. She stood there, staring at her car for a long moment, then looked toward my house. Even from the window, I could see the glare of entitlement in her eyes. She didn't see a neighbor. She saw a resource, a walking batteries, a free charging station that dared to say no to her. The moment she went inside, I knew she was going to try again that night. The stage was set. My system was ready. All I needed now was patience. Around midnight, I lay in bed, eyes closed, half asleep but still alert, waiting for the notification. The house was silent. Even the breeze seemed to pause, as if anticipating what was coming. Then ping. My phone lit up. External load detected 7.4 kW. I grinned. I opened the live camera feed. There it was. The orange extension cable, snaking under the fence like a thief in the night. Plugged into my outlets, I saw her garage lights come on. Her Tesla S charging port glowed green. She had done it again, and she had absolutely no idea what was about to happen. The load balancer watched quietly for the first 30 seconds. Her Tesla showed charging. She likely thought everything was normal. Then the system kicked in. Voltage shift. 248 volts for half a second. Then 210 volts. Then stabilized at a fluctuating range EV chargers hate. On the feed, her Tesla S charging light flickered uncertainly. Then turned from green to orange to red. Inside her garage, I saw her silhouette freeze. She stepped toward her car. I imagined her staring at the dashboard message. Charging error. Unstable power source. She unplugged the charger. Plugged it back in. Tried again. Same error. She stomped her foot. Unplugged it again. Plugged it back in again. Red arrows. Red arrows. Red again. I muted my laughter to avoid waking the whole neighborhood. She yanked the cable, stomped outside, and glared toward my house like she could sense that the universe was mocking her. Then she stormed inside, slamming her garage door so hard it rattled my wind chimes. The best part, she still had no idea that I was the one who orchestrated every second. But I knew Karen's. She was stubborn. She wasn't done. She'd come back again because people like her couldn't accept defeat. They had to win. They had to take. They had to dominate. Good. Because every time she tried to plug into my system, the voltage trap would become just a little more annoying. And eventually, she would push everything too far. She would force the confrontation she thought she would win. And she wouldn't realize until it was far too late that I had engineered everything to end exactly how I wanted. For the next several days, my smart grid system worked beautifully. Every time Karen tried to plug her Tesla into my outdoor outlet, the voltage guard kicked in and shut her down within seconds. Her Tesla wouldn't charge. Her charger would error out, and she had no explanation for it. She changed cables. She rebooted her charging system. She even called Tesla service, who, judging by the annoyed tone I overheard through my window, kept telling her the same thing. Ma'am, your car is not the problem. The power source is unstable. She didn't like that answer. And she sure didn't like that though. Unstable. Power source was my house. Every day I saw her glaring at my property from across her driveway, hands on her hips like she owned the entire street. It was almost entertaining watching her try to figure out why my free power wasn't cooperating anymore. But Karen being Karen's, she wasn't going to quietly accept defeat. She was waiting for the perfect moment to flip the script and blame me. And that moment came faster than I expected. One afternoon, just as I finished adjusting the charge limit settings on my inverter, I heard a loud knock on my door, sharp, angry, repeated, the kind of knock that says, "Open up," or "I'll open it for you." I opened the door to see Karen standing there with two members of the HOA board behind her. The president and the treasurer. Both wore uncomfortable smiles, the kind of smiles people use when they know they're about to say something stupid but don't want to seem rude. Karen didn't even wait for them to speak. He.s. sabotaging my Tesla. The HOA president raised his hands. Let's start calmly. No. Karen snapped, pointing at me like she was accusing me of grand theft. He messed with the voltage in his house. It's interfering with my charger. Every time I plug in, it fails. I looked at her, stunned by the sheer level of delusion. Karen, you replugging into my house without permission. Again? The treasurer cleared his throat gently. Well, Karen informed us that she occasionally uses your power because her home charger installation has been delayed. So perhaps there was a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding, I said firmly. She ran an extension cable under my fence and plugged her Tesla into my outlet without asking. Karen scoffed. It's not illegal to use someone's extra energy. You weren't using it at night. Solar energy is community-friendly. Your setup is practically overpowered. The HOA president nodded like this nonsense made sense. We do encourage environmentally friendly cooperation among neighbors. I stared at him. Cooperation requires permission. Karen crossed her arms smugly. Why are you being difficult? It's a tiny amount of energy compared to what you generate. And now you intentionally destabilizing your power output to harass me. I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. You think I am destabilizing my entire electrical system just to inconvenience you? Yes, she shouted. You punishing me because you don't like that I have an electric car. I blinked twice. Half this neighborhood has electric cars. Well, she snapped. You don't seem to bother them. The HOA president stepped forward. Look, maybe we can find a reasonable compromise. Karen suggested that since you have such an advanced solar setup, you could allow her to share it temporarily. My jaw nearly hit the floor. Share? You mean she wants me to give her free electricity while she accuses me of sabotage? The treasurer tried to soften it. Not free. Maybe. A small discounted rate. Karen nodded eagerly. Yes, that's fair. I'll pay you $5 a week. I almost choked. $5. She was draining more than that per night. Absolutely not, I said. And if she tries plugging into my outlets again, I'll treat it as trespassing and power theft. Karen rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh, please. Like you'd ever call the police. Her mistake was assuming I lacked a spine. I stepped back, grabbed my phone, and tapped the screen. A video popped up, my outdoor camera footage. The timestamp was perfectly clear. The shot was perfectly angled. It showed her extension cable running under my fence, plugged into my outlets. The HOA president's expression changed instantly. Karen's face drained of color. I've been recording every incident. I said calmly. This is proof of unauthorized access to my property. I haven't shared this with law enforcement yet, but I will if she continues. Karen's mouth flapped open like a fish pulled out of water. You can record me. I didn't record you. I replied. Just my outlet. And your cable. The HOA president rubbed his chin. Well, this does complicate things. Karen lunged forward, jabbing her finger toward my phone. Delete that video. No. You have no right to film anything near my property. I filmed my property. And my cables. Your cable isn't your property when you shove it through my fence. She stood frozen for a moment, her face twitching between rage and panic. She knew she was cornered. She knew she had no arguments. But she would never admit she was wrong. People like her would rather invent new rules than follow existing ones. She spun toward the HOA board. Are you two just going to stand there? Do something. The HOA president cleared his throat awkwardly. Karen, based on this evidence, you don't have permission to use his electricity. Karen gasped as if betrayed by her closest allies. So you retaking his side. We re-acknowledging facts. The treasurer added. And he is within his rights to deny access. Karen stomped her foot like an angry toddler. This is discrimination. This is harassment. He's manipulating his voltage so I can charge. I shrugged. My voltage is fine for everything inside my house. If your illegal cable doesn't like it, that is not my problem. She screamed, literally screamed, fine. I'll call the police on you. For what? I asked. For messing with your electricity. It's unsafe. That was when I realized the truth. She knew she was wrong. But she also believed she could twist reality so hard that the HOA or the police would believe her instead. It would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Before she left, she got in one final threat. "You haven't heard the last of this." She snarled. "I am going to make sure you regret messing with me." She stormed off, slamming her door hard enough to shake the siding on her garage. The HOA board exchanged uncomfortable glances, muttered something about looking into mediation, and scurried after her like scared pigeons. I closed my door, let out a long breath, and leaned against the wall. Karen was done playing games. She was ready to go nuclear, and she had no idea that if she escalated this any further. The day after Karen's dramatic HOA ambush, I woke up early, half expecting another round of banging on my door or a threatening letter shoved into my mailbox. Instead, everything was strangely quiet. Too quiet. The type of quiet that made you feel like the storm hadn't passed, it was gathering strength. But Karen's silence didn't comfort me. It concerned me. People like her didn't retreat. They regrouped. I spent most of the morning checking my solar logs, tightening my system, making sure everything on my property was properly locked down. My security camera pointed at the outdoor outlet was running smoothly. My voltage guard was calibrated perfectly. My battery bank was fully topped off thanks to a bright afternoon sun. Everything was ready. Then, around dusk, I noticed something odd. Karen's Tesla wasn't outside. Her driveway was empty. That could only mean one thing: she wasn't done trying to steal power. She was just trying a new tactic. Hours passed. The sun disappeared. The night deepened. I sat in my living room, the glow of my smart grid interface reflecting off the glass table, waiting like a fisherman watching for a tug on the line. Then it came. Ping. External load detected. 7.5 kW. Unauthorized. I exhaled sharply, a mixture of irritation and amusement washing over me. She was back, but something was different this time. I checked the live camera feed and the extension cable wasn't under the fence. It wasn't anywhere near my yard. That's when I realized she had changed tactics entirely. The power draw wasn't coming from my side yard. It was coming from the other side of the house. I switched cameras and finally found it. She had run her extension cable down the sidewalk, around the bushes, and into the darkness behind my garage. She had plugged her Tesla into a different outdoor outlet, the one that sits on the back wall near my workshop. She had trespassed deeper onto my property than ever before. She was escalating, and now she was about to face the consequences. I tapped my voltage override. My system was already programmed to block unauthorized loads, but since she had moved to a different outlet, I had manually triggered the trap. It took one button. Just one. The load balancer engaged. Her Tesla continued to draw power for the first 30 seconds. Unaware of what was coming, I watched the wattage climb smoothly on my dashboard. Karen must have been sitting in her car, thinking she had finally outsmarted me. Finally beat the system. Then the voltage dropped to 212. Surged to 246. Dropped again. Spiked again just enough to trip the Tesla's protective circuitry. Instant red error. A moment later, a loud yell cut through the quiet night. I muted my cameras, but I didn't have to hear it to imagine it. Karen had stepped out of her Tesla in full meltdown mode. She stormed around the side of my house, shines her flashlight toward my outlet as if ready to rip it out of the wall. I watched her through the camera as she crouched down, unplugged the cable, plugged it back in, and tried again. Red arrows. She tried again. Red arrows. She tried again, this time kicking the charger angrily. Red arrows. Red arrows. Red arrows. Then she exploded. "This is illegal. You are illegals. Your house is illegal." I nearly choked laughing. She stomped toward her car, grabbed her phone, and started dialing. I knew exactly what she was doing. She was calling the police. She had threatened it before. And tonight, in her outrage, she was carrying it out. Perfect. I stepped outside calmly just as she was finishing her outraged report. "Yes," she screamed into the phone. "His power is dangerous. P.S. manipulating it. My car nearly broke because of him. Get someone here now. When she saw me, she pointed her finger like a weapon. You going to jail for this. I leaned against the railings, perfectly calm. For protecting my own property. For sabotaging me. You mean the power you stealing? She gasped dramatically. It isn't stealing. It's community solar. And this is community trespassing. She opened and closed her mouth. Unable to counter. She shoved the phone against her ear. Yes. TS right here. TS threatening me. TS tampering with electrical equipment. I chuckled. Karen, your car isn't broken. My outlet is simply not available for your personal charging station. You endangering the public grid. It is my house. Karen, and you manipulated the voltage to make my car think it is unsafe. That is because it is unsafe. I said, stepping forward. When someone illegally plugs into my system, the safety locks activate. She froze. Her mind finally clicked. She realized I wasn't just some random neighbor with solar panels. I was someone who knew exactly what he was doing. The police arrived within minutes. 2 officers who already looked exhausted. Maybe they had met Karen before. Maybe they recognized her voice from the phone and already regretted the dispatch. All right. One officer said tiredly. What is going on here? Karen launched into a dramatic monologue about sabotage, unstable voltage, personal harassment, energy discrimination, and something she called solar bullying, which almost made the officer laugh. I stayed silent until the officer finally turned to me. Sir, your side. I gestured to my phone. You want to see the recording. I showed them the camera feed. It clearly displayed Karen walking onto my property, plugging her extension cable into my outlet behind the garage. The timestamp was clear. The trespassing was unmistakable. The theft was undeniable. The officers' faces shifted from tired to annoyed. Ma'am, one said, this is not your property. But he is sabotaging me. You stealing electricity. The officer corrected. No. He is hoarding it. The officer blinked. Ma'am, that is not a thing. He manipulated his voltage to attack my Tesla. No. The officer said flatly. He has a right to protect his own grid. Karen looked around wildly, as if searching for a hidden camera or some cosmic entity that might swoop in and save her. But there was nothing. She was wrong. She was caught. And she was alone. The officer continued. If you step onto his property again or plug anything into his home without permission, you will be charged with trespassing and theft. Karen's mouth fell open. Me? Charged? Yes. The officer said. You? But the HOA. We don't enforce HOA rules. Ma'am, we enforce the law. Karen staggered backward like the wind had been punched out of her. And then, finally blessedly she went silent. The officers gave her a stern warning, advised her to remove her cable immediately, and suggested she stop trying to rewire the neighborhood. When they left, she dragged her cable home, defeated, humiliated, and for once speechless. As I walked back inside, my phone buzzed with a final log from my smart grid. External load disconnected. Unauthorized access terminated. Perfect. Karen never tried to use my electricity again. And for the first time since moving into the neighborhood, I finally had peace. She'd be handing me the final victory herself.